My guest tonight is a research fellow at the Institute of Public Affairs, a think tank on political and economic issues, and is a regular columnist for the Sunday Age. Thanks so much for joining me on the program today.
Thanks, Paul. Great to be here.
Awesome. Now, you're a research fellow. Does that mean a research fellow, so you're just a guy that does some research?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure what it means. I think the think tank community stole it from universities to make us seem very, very intelligent. Not to say that we aren't very intelligent, Paul.
We're a think tank.
We're a think tank. We spend a lot of time thinking.
And I guess you write down those ideas. I've got you in because, to be honest, the show is mostly just me talking about stuff as if I know.
Sure.
And instead I thought I'd get someone else talking about as if they know. But I assume you might actually know some things. What I thought we'd talk about, a little bit about Emission Trading Scheme. It's interesting. The media coverage is pretty much, it's all about the opposition and how much they're all like, they don't have a position on it. But there's really not that much coverage of what it actually is and what the Rudd government's proposing.
Yeah.
What's your take on the Emission Trading Scheme?
I think that's exactly right, Paul. I think it's a real shame that nobody's talking about what the Emissions Trading Scheme actually is. I think a lot of people seem to think of the emissions trading scheme as just a code word for the environment. Oh, well, there's an emission trading scheme. It'll all be fixed once we have that. The emissions trading scheme is an extraordinarily complicated economic reform. It's probably the biggest economic reform since Federation. In other words, it's the biggest economic reform we'll ever have in Australia.
Bigger than GST.
Far bigger than the GST. The GST was just a 10% tax on sales. This is a tax on energy. Energy is the source of pretty much every transaction, everything we do in society and the economy.
So on the basis that basically to create energy at the moment, it involves carbon pollution, carbon emissions. So the idea of taxing anything that creates carbon.
Yeah, exactly.
Carbon emissions, yeah.
Exactly. It's basically a tax on producing stuff. And producing stuff is what an economy does.
Okay.
So I think it's a really big issue, and I think it's a shame that everybody's focusing on, leadership debates within the Liberal Party and whether there are skeptics in the Liberal Party or not, rather than talking to the government about this pretty big thing they've got going on.
It's kind of a big thing, like, hey guys, what about this policy you might want to have a look at? It's interesting. It's really complex in that kind of means that who's actually going to end up paying for this? Because obviously the government's got to take a whole lot of tax for it, but is it going to be the energy companies that pay, or is it going to be the consumers? Like, where does the buck stop?
Well, energy companies will have to pay to start. They have to buy the carbon permits. But energy companies aren't stupid. We buy energy from those companies. They're going to pass the costs in some way or another down to us. So we are going to have to pay. It's going to trickle through different layers, through companies, through resellers and that sort of thing. But eventually, we're going to have to pay it. This will be a substantial increase in the price of energy and therefore the price of pretty much everything. But the government can't really say how much. They don't know.
So this is the interesting thing, is the debate. If we're going to have a debate about it's kind of, I feel like it's general consensus, an ETS probably needs to be done. That's what most developing countries are saying. Yes, we need an ETS in order to fight this climate change thing. But then what are the details that are going to be debated if we do have a proper discussion about this?
Well, they're going to have to debate how it fits into the global scheme that they're going to discuss at Copenhagen. They're going to have to debate what industries are included within the carbon trading scheme. Does agriculture get included? Who pays for the cost of emissions from petrol? For instance, do the petrol companies or do the individuals who emit it? Now, at the moment, they've chosen petrol companies, probably because that's the most sensible thing to do. But there's a lot of things that they have to decide, because it's not as easy as just saying every piece of carbon that you throw up in the air, you have to pay a tax on. Eventually, they have to decide who pays that tax? How much is it going to be?
The agriculture thing is interesting, because I think, as far as my understanding is, it's essentially about cows farting. And whether they're going to tax that. Am I more or less right?
Apparently cows farting is a big issue. Methane apparently is a significant greenhouse gas. I won't pretend to know anything about it, but for obvious reasons. But one of the big things they've got to worry about is, for instance, bushfires. I've seen stories about trying to calculate the amount of CO2 that comes out of bushfires.
So that just would have been immense. It was just insane.
There's a huge amount of CO2 buried in the ground. Whenever farmers plough a field, they push up a bit of CO2 or a volume of CO2. These are things they have to start worrying about. These are things that the government has started thinking through, but they're not really being discussed, because I don't think the press, like yourself, really understand what an ETS is. It's pretty complicated.
I'm going to hit the books. Now, that's a good start.
Please.
I think for our viewers and myself, I got a basic understanding. Hopefully demonstrating that, but I think we can go on from there. Now, let's get down into the political stuff. We'll leave the ETS for now, but let's deal with the stuff that is going on that everyone's focusing on. Just quickly, we've only got a minute or two, but Peter Costello's left early. Why do you think he's... I don't know, his reasons that, there's a candidate in place. I don't really buy that. Why do you think he's got out early?
I think Peter Costello was looking for a way to get out. I think he was looking for a reason to get out. And clearly he's found a personal reason to leave politics. He's decided that he's not into it anymore. Now, that's fantastic. If you're not into politics, you should probably leave politics. It is surprising how long he hung around, realistically. Maybe he thought he had another chance at the leadership.
20 years is a long time to stay in that green room and debate people that keep arguing and shouting at you.
Yeah, but he seems to have really enjoyed it.
That's the thing. He just really enjoys it.
It's like John Howard. They really like it. They hang around because it's fun.
Politicians are weird.
I know.
Question Time's the only...
Yeah, I know. And it's a lot of fun to watch Question Time. And it's the only thing we know about it, to be honest.
Well, Chris Berg, thank you so much for joining me on the program today.